So today I'm going to be breaking down something that I think is very important for all businesses who are getting into the world of Google Ads to sort of understand. I think it's pretty common across the board where people think you can just do a little bit of research, get a ton of keywords and throw them all into one campaign and then hope for the best. When in fact there's so many different layers to it in order to set up a Google Ads strategy for growth, and that really starts from the beginning, right? You've got to make sure that you're doing the right research to begin with. You've got to make sure that you're doing your deep dive on your competitors, your keywords, your keyword competition, your keyword costs, landing pages, absolutely everything that goes into it. And building a solid foundation is really what's then going to set you up for long-term success. I mean, I'm going to do my best to sort of simplify it and break it down in terms of how we go about things and how we approach things. And there's sort of four or five key pillars to this. So obviously you've got your research phase and your strategy phase. You then have your launch phase. You've then got your learning phase. You've then got your optimizations, which obviously you're doing all the time, but there's certain things that come later down the line. You've also got your testing phases and then your scaling. The one thing actually here, I think that there's probably the biggest grey area around is how to scale an account. We've personally gone in and audited a large number of accounts where they've got off to a great start and then they've just 10x the budget without paying any consideration in terms of any potential ceilings that they may have or sending Google back to the learning phase. So there's various different ways you can go about it, which I'll do my best to break down in here whilst trying to be short and concise. But if we start things off with the strategy phase, right? So I would argue that this is probably the most important stage of any part of Google Ads campaigns. This is going to be building the right foundations in terms of account structure, who you're targeting, what your copy is like, and how you're essentially going to grow out the account. How we would break this down is into a few different categories here. So you've obviously got to do a thorough onboarding. So here you've really got to ask yourself, if you're running it yourself, or ask your clients some really difficult questions in terms of getting accurate and honest answers from them. We're in the software space, so accurate answers around client churn, accurate answers around LTV, realistic answers around free to paid conversion rates, because this is going to be your baseline of what your KPIs should be in terms of cost per acquisition and obviously spend and what the ceiling is there. Once you've got all of this information, then what you want to then be doing is kickstarting some keyword research. So keyword research is obviously, everybody's got their own different ways of going about it, but essentially you want to be going in pretty deep on this. And we like to not just set up for the immediate launches. We also like to get a bank of keywords ready to deploy when the time is right. We use tools such as SEMrush. We use Answer the Public. We use Google Keyword Planner, which is probably the main tool that we do use. We go through on Google and run organic searches. We essentially, where you want to start off here is understanding what is the core offering of the business, and then start building out keywords from that. You can use ChatGPT to give you some inspiration, but I would take that for a pinch of salt. Then what you want to then do is focus on the volume side of things as well. So what keywords have the most volume? Also, you want to be looking at the competition of the keywords, and then you also want to be having a look at the cost of each of these keywords. From here, what you would then want to be doing is segmenting them out into ad groups that are themed. So you want to make sure that you've got clear and concise message match with what your keywords are targeting. We use a specific framework to make sure that we're covering all angles. So you need to make sure you get your keywords in there. Obviously, you need to make sure you've got good call to actions, product benefits, competitor comparisons, USPs, features, and really speak to the pain points of the people that you're targeting. This is going to be a big factor in actually getting the right people onto your page. I think one thing as well is click through. This sort of leads me onto the click through rate, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it could be sort of somewhat seen as a bit of a vanity metric at times. a high click-through rate necessarily doesn't mean a great performing campaign in terms of ad copy. If you're not pre-qualifying the people, because you could be presenting an offer that's simply not true, or directing people who aren't right for the product to the page. So we always like to pre-qualify who we're sending to the client's websites. Aside from this, you want to be taking also a look into competitors. So there's a lot of great tools out there, but you've got Ads Transparency Center, which is pretty good. You can essentially plug in all your competitors' URLs, see what ads they're running, reverse engineer what's working, any common themes, any areas where you can capitalize. But essentially, once you've got all of this, you've got your keywords, you've got your ad groups, you've done your competitor research. You also want to then segment everything out into campaigns as well. Depending on budget, or targeting parameters, you might have multiple campaigns, or you might have one campaign, but it's really dependent on budget at this moment in time. Aside from all of this, in parallel, what you really need to be looking into is conversion tracking as well. So one thing that we do notice is in probably 80% of the accounts we go into, and that's not an exaggeration. Conversion tracking is usually not set up or broken. So depending on what you're selling, it can either be quite complex or it could be quite simple. I mean, a lot of our clients are B2B softwares where they sort of is lead generation. So we just connect up to their CRM, which is generally HubSpot, and then you can then set up offline tracking. So then you can take a look into re-uploading the data into Google for sales qualified leads, contract sent, contract close, along with the value, which helps train the algorithm. So these are sort of the fundamentals of the strategy process. I could go into a lot more detail on this, but the video will probably take but that will probably take me all day, and I do want to cover off a few things. One thing is once you've done that, this is probably the shortest part, is obviously you launch, basically just upload everything into Google Ads, and you need to make sure that you've got no disapprovals and all of that sort of good stuff. If you are an agency, please keep your client in the loop of this. Review everything with them that you're uploading into Google Ads. You're spending their money at the end of the day, so you need to make sure they're happy with the keywords you're targeting and also the ad copy that you're putting out, and make sure that everybody's in complete alignment before you do actually press any buttons. So once you do launch, you're going to head into a learning phase, which is around it usually is 7 days as per Google, but it's arguably the whole first month is a learning phase, right? So here you're going to be collecting your baseline data. And what's particularly important in this first month is having a close eye on negative keywords. So what we do is we go into the account every single day and we review the search term report, and we add negative keywords every single day to sort of tighten the net of people that we're targeting. You will find that you're targeting a lot of shit at the beginning, and loads of things are going to be seeping through. Particularly if you're any companies in the AI space, as soon as you put the word AI, you're going to attract a lot of shit. So you need to make sure that you're going in every single day and adding negatives. What that's going to do is sort of train the algorithm in terms of what you want to be showing for. It's going to bring your cost per clicks down. It's going to help with your click-through rates. It's going to help with impression share. Eventually, it's going to help bring your CPA down. This isn't something that you should be just doing in the initial learning phase, right? You need to be doing this every single day. Again, it's something that we see is neglected so frequently. But yeah, that's a massive part of it. What you also want to be doing here is collecting your baseline data. So essentially, you don't want to be making any wholesale changes within the first month. You need to give Google time to adjust and understand what you're actually targeting. You need to collect data. You need to get conversions. So you don't want to be redoing any sort of campaigns unless something's gone terribly wrong, or you don't want to be pulling every single keyword out and redoing it, or upping the budget, decreasing the budget, changing bid strategies. You want to be collecting your baseline data. So what we tend to have a look at is obviously conversions, CPA, click-through rates, conversion rates, impression share lost, impression share, keyword quality scores, the list goes on. But you want to be collecting this in whatever way you find easy to review. We like to use Google Sheets, and we've got notifications set up for certain triggers in ad accounts to sort of help us keep fully aligned on everything. But then that's sort of going to formulate the ideas behind the next phase, which is obviously the testing phase, right? So the testing phase is where you're then going to start making variations of what you've put out already. So, for example, you've got a bad click-through rate, so you want to get more people onto the page. So then you split test some ad copy. Here you want to keep a very controlled environment. So usually just test one variable at a time. Record the metrics, leave it run for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on data collected, rinse and repeat. So this is where you're going to start seeing those gradual improvements. It's not just click-through rates or ad copy that you can be testing. It could be bid strategies, landing pages, different offers. It could be absolutely anything, but you need to be testing. Even when you're happy with the results, keep testing, because you can always do better. One thing in Google is you don't want to be standing still ever. Aside from the testing as well, then you've got the optimization, the ongoing optimizations as well. So we segment these out into routine optimizations and advanced optimizations. For the benefit of this video, I'll just give a very high level overview. So the routine optimizations will be obviously like negative keywords, checking it, making sure that everything's running okay within the account and there's no disapprovals, having a look at quality scores, having a look at ad copy, having a look at impression share, and all of that good stuff. But more advanced side of things is where you then have enough data to make some bigger decisions, in a sense. So, I mean, you can then go all in on particular keywords or campaigns. You can then start gutting the campaigns of what isn't working. If you've got one campaign with a number of ad groups and there's only 2 ad groups that are getting spend, potentially moving the ad groups with no spend into their own campaign, so then they've got another opportunity to spend. So this is also an element of scaling, but you need to make sure that if you're managing it yourself, that you're in the account every single day, following your routine optimizations and then going through to the advanced optimizations. Scaling, this is probably the most exciting part, actually. So a lot of people go in and they go hell for leather on it and they fucking chuck a ton of money at it and they hope for the best, and that it just blows the account, and it's terrible to see. So obviously, naturally, the first thing is to put a bit more money in it. So if you are scaling budget, you want to be doing this incrementally, right? You need to be doing anywhere between 10 to 20% every 5 to 7 days. This way we don't go into the learning phase. We can see the impact of what it has on the CPA, the CPCs and everything. Once it's stabilized, we can then go again until you hit the ceiling. One key metric you need to look here is the search impression share lost by budget. Google will often say limited by budget. You have a look at this metric and you see that you're losing none of the search impressions because of your budget. It's just to get you to spend more. So if this is 0, do not raise the budget at all on this particular campaign. But aside from obviously scaling the budget, you can then scale out horizontally. So you can, for this, you can target new countries. You can target, you could launch some YouTube campaigns. We like to do remarketing campaigns as well. If it's a fresh account and they've got no audience lists yet, customer lists yet, or audience lists, you could do demand gen campaigns. And then you can also take a look into further search campaigns. One thing that we're finding is working pretty well is doing broad campaigns with targeted audiences based on what's converted, based on what audiences have converted in the observation only. But yeah, if you sort of follow this framework here, so get a really good strategy in place. Obviously, understand that you're going to have a learning phase. Test consistently. Carry out your ongoing optimizations, both routine and advanced, and then follow this sort of scaling framework. You should be onto a winner. One thing is worth noting is it does take time. You can't brute force Google Ads. You've got to train it. You've got to get the right conversion data. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So if there's any businesses out there that's looking for any help with Google Ads in the software space or AI space, give us a shout. My team and I specialize in this area. We've helped a large number of software companies, both with ad accounts and no ad